So good morning to everybody from France and good afternoon to everyone who's joined from India.
Today we are here to discuss about a policy with which the Indian government demands that a seller, which is an OEM, provides a service or product and in addition helps the government to obtain additional technology, business or investment. The clause allows for economic growth of the country in the process of completing the deal. While some offset clauses may ask for investments, other may impose terms like onboarding of local suppliers in the process. The key objectives of offsets are to leverage capital acquisition and to develop national research and development and encourage aerospace, civil, and internal security sectors. The Ministry of Defense portal for offset shows the details of Indian offset partners and foreign vendors. Here, we can see that there are major players from around the world like USA and Israel. And thanks to the Indo-French friendly relations in the field of defense and security, we can see some of the contracts in favor of French companies like MBDA, Thales, and of course, Dassault. The Indian defense market is expected to grow at a rate of 11% until 2024. And some of the examples of the products are aircraft and aircraft parts, UAVs, aero engines, missiles, electronics and communication equipment, and many more. Now, to speak specifically about the aerospace market, aerospace and defense opportunity in India is a growing market with increasing involvement with international players. Indian Air Force is the fourth strongest air force in the world, following US, Russia, and Israel. The update plans for Indian Air Force include acquisition of more advanced fighters, sophisticated systems, and long-range weapons. There are many large-scale procurement, upgradation, and repair overhaul contracts being inked in the defense aviation, providing immense offset opportunities. The industry can partner with suppliers or OEMs in the areas of engineering, design, testing, maintenance, overhaul, software or quality assurance services for existing equipments. Speaking for the maritime market, India is the 16th biggest maritime nation, strategically located in the Indian Ocean. Since 90% of India's trade is via sea, the country's economic well-being is very closely linked to Indian Navy. The Navy is obliged to keep India's sea trade free and open at all times. The Indian Navy strength is about 130 ships and submarines. It is planning to increase it to 175 ship fleet by 2027 as per the capability plan. With these plans in place, let us look at opportunities that lie ahead of us. A market study projects that 15,000 defense contracts will be made by 2020, with the offset obligations of around 100 billion US dollars. The union budget for this year, 2021, presented by Finance Minister in the Parliament, allocated 65 billion US dollars for the defense market. The Ministry of Defense said that until October 2029, it had entered a total of 54 defense offset contracts with the foreign OEMs. It also added that more than 170 local firms had been selected as offset partners by foreign OEMs. Of these contracts, 32 were related to Indian Air Force, 15 to the Navy, and 7 to the Indian Army. So many initiatives are being taken by Indian government to promote Make in India in the defense manufacturing sector. The offset contracts are usually complex in terms of co-production, licensing, technology transfer, technical valuation, and the others. So with these policies, I will ask Preeti to start because this is where Business France can help ease the process of French companies coming to India and involving in these projects. So Preeti, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Ashwini. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone who's joined from France and India. By way of introduction, my name is Preeti Ramdasi. I'm a lawyer and I work at Business France as a legal advisor, where we try and help French companies ease in their regulatory processes in India. Ashwini has given us a market overview of offsets. What I will try and do is to help you understand the offset process from a regulatory and an operational point of view. But before we do that, I think I'm going to be very loyal-like and just add a few caveats before we actually start. So the first one is that for those of you who are already working in this sector will know that the topic is quite vast. It can take quite a few hours to go into the nitty-gritties and details of every aspect related to offsets. So because we have only 30 minutes, what I will try and do is to cover the different aspects of offsets, but not go into the details of each. That's number one. I think number two is that we have a diverse set of participants today. So I think there are companies who are perhaps in quite an advanced stage of offset of discharging offset obligation, but there are also some others who are at a very nascent stage or who have just about started. So for some of you, the presentation might be quite advanced, and for some of you, it might be quite basic. Apologies for this mismatch. We can try and cover these gaps in the question and answer session subsequently. And the last point that I wanted to make was that, again, many of you may know that the defense procurement policy has been in India since 2000. There have been many iterations. The offset obligations have changed through the years. Today, what I will try and do is to present the obligations as they stand under the last policy, which is the 2016 policy. I unfortunately may not be able to give a comparative analysis of how it has changed, because I know that for some of you, you may be bound by an earlier policy. What I have, however, tried to do at the end is to give an overview of the 2020 policy has been tabled. So I will take you through some of the changes that are proposed there. I may not be able to go in the past and do a comparative analysis of the DPP up until now. So the regulation or the guidelines can be quite haphazard, not very coherent. So what I've tried to do is to present the regulations from three dimensions. So one, we'll start off by really addressing the core of the guidelines, which is the substantive guidelines. Then I'll take you through some of the procedural aspects that are associated with offsets, and then conclude again with something that I think is quite critical, is to see the operational aspects, which is to see how the guidelines actually work on ground. So if we can start with the substantive guidelines, it's really to understand what the offset guidelines are, when and who do they apply to, and how. So I think I will not, this is a very preliminary slide. I think, like it's been discussed, the overarching policy is the defense procurement policy. Sorry, so I'm not sure if I was audible when I was talking about what offsets mean, but it's really an act of compensating the ordering country, which is India, to make sure that for every purchase that it makes from a foreign company, there's some sort of value addition that happens. So that's really what offset means. Underlying objectives, I think Ashwini already discussed what the objectives were. And while it may seem that they're just theoretical and they have to be there, actually for offsets, there's quite an importance given to the objectives, as I will discuss later on, because the offset guidelines are subject to interpretation, and for interpretation, we need to understand the objectives. So the objectives of the offset, so the underlying objectives are quite important when it comes to offset guidelines. The objectives are really quite simply like the defense procurement policy and Make in India twofold. So the Indian government and therefore the Ministry of Defense really wants to enhance the capacity of Indian industry. And so that's really the objective. It's to develop the capacity of Indian industry, and also I think synergistic sectors like the civil, aerospace, and internal security systems. So that's the underlying objectives of the offset policy in India. Now, to understand when offset obligations get triggered in India, we have to go back to the defense procurement, understand what are the different procurement mechanisms that we have for buying defense products. And there are 6 that we have now. Unfortunately, I will not be able to go into the details of the procurement mechanisms, but there are 6, 3 under the buy mechanism and 3 under buy and make. So we have 6. And of these, offsets are applicable to only 2 categories of capital acquisition. One is buy global, essentially, it means that the Indian government is making an outright purchase of the equipment, of the defense equipment, from a foreign entity. And the second one is buy and make, where the Indian entity again is buying from a foreign player, but there is some Indian component there. So offset obligations apply only to these 2 categories, and it applies only when the cost of the acquisition is or is more than 20 billion rupees. So that's really the threshold and trigger point for offset obligations to apply in India. Now, what is the value of offset? Again, it's been fairly well quantified. It's essentially 30% of the estimated cost. So if it's buy global, for example, so it's 100, India is buying something from a French company worth 100 units, then the offset obligation is 30 units. So that unit could be a euro or a rupee. The same for a buy and make. If the Indian government is buying something worth 100 units and the foreign exchange component is 70, then 30% of that, which is 210, would be the value of the offsets. Then we come to who has to discharge the offset obligations, right? So again, we have to go back to the main procurement contract that the government has with the company, and whoever is the primary vendor there, that primary vendor has the obligation of discharging offsets. Now, I think eventually the government in India realized that the value can be quite high, and therefore they have eased in a little bit and have said that the vendor can allow his tier 1 sub-vendors also to discharge the offset obligations. And this is pro rata, so it is to the extent of their work share in the main procurement contract. So it's essentially the vendor and the tier 1 vendors who have to discharge the offset obligations. Having said that, it is important to keep in mind that the liability and the responsibility will always rest with the primary vendor. So if there is a shortfall tomorrow by the tier 1 vendor, then the responsibility to recover that shortfall is always with the vendor. So yes, there is distribution, but liability still rests with the primary vendor. Now this slide, how to discharge offset obligation, to me is really the crux of offsets. So this tells you about how you go about discharging your offset obligations in India, what are the avenues and who can discharge the offset obligations. So under the offset guidelines in 2016, the government has identified 6 key avenues for discharge. On this slide, I've only mentioned 4 because they are the key avenues. There are 2 more. But the guidelines state that 70% of your offset obligations have to be discharged via these 4 avenues. Now, please bear in mind that there are 4 avenues, but what I've put in brackets are the conditionalities that every avenue comes with. What does that mean? That it's not that if you adopt one avenue, 100% of what you've done will be goes towards your offset credits. No, there are certain conditionalities you have to fulfill before you get the offset credit for every avenue. So I will go through them one by one. So the first one is pretty straightforward. It essentially means direct purchase of any product or service in India. So tomorrow you don't want to have a setup in India, but you have an offset obligation. You decide to just purchase certain services or products from India, and that can qualify for offsets. But what is the conditionality there? You can only account for the value addition that has been done in India. Now, what does that mean? Supposing you buy a product from India that is worth 100 units, but that product has a foreign raw material, for example, that is 30 units, then your offset credit is only 70. You will have to deduct any foreign imported component that is there in the product that you're buying from India. So that's the first one. It's very straightforward, and if I may say, it's the simplest way of discharging an offset obligation. The second one, again, is also fairly simple, is where you invest money. So you do a foreign direct investment, FDI in India, via a joint venture or a wholly owned subsidiary, again, to manufacture products or services. What is the conditionality here? In India, in the defense sector, we have sectoral caps on FDI. So if you want to invest in India in the civil aerospace domain, you may set up a wholly owned subsidiary, which is 100% owned by the parent company. But if you want to come into India in the defense sector, you can only come in under what we call the automatic route, essentially, which means you don't need a government approval, but only up to 49%. So there is a cap. If you want to invest anything more, then you will need permission of the government, which is not easy to come by. So this avenue is subject to the FDI sectoral caps. The third and the fourth avenues really have very little incentive for companies to undertake that avenue, but I've put it there anyways because you can do it technically. The third one is investment in kind, which essentially means that you do a technology transfer to an Indian enterprise, again for manufacture or for rendering services. In lieu, you could get equity or you could do it, the law says that you could do it in a non-equity way, which is co-production or co-development, but there is no license fee that may be charged by the company for this. And also the offset credit is quite low because it is, I'm sorry, but this is a little bit technical, but one, if you undertake an offset obligation under this route, one, you will compulsorily have to buy back what is manufactured. That's step number one. Once you buy back what is manufactured, only 10% of what you buy back can actually be an offset credit. So the value that you get for a credit, the offset credit that you get for this avenue is pretty low. And it's the same for this fourth avenue that I have put, which is investment in kind in terms of provision of equipment. So essentially, you don't do any technology transfer, you don't give money, but you provide an Indian company with certain equipment for them and enable them to produce certain products in India. But again, there is a if you go compulsorily buyback within the offset contract, and that's a minimum of 40%. So these are the 4 key avenues for discharge. Then the other 2 that you have is when DRDO, which is a government organization, Defense Research and Development Organization of India, there's a compulsory technology acquisition that they do. And the other one is you do a technology transfer, TOT, to government organizations. So these are the other 2 avenues for discharge. But largely what has been used by private sector are these 4. Now, who can discharge? Now, again, going back to the objectives, indeed, the idea for the government to have the offset policy is to capacitate and build capacity in Indian companies. So essentially, therefore, they say that you have to have an Indian enterprise who is called an Indian offset partner who can discharge the offset obligations for you. So that Indian offset partner, the tier 1 vendor or the primary vendor, it's at their discretion. They can choose whoever they want, as long as, of course, they're in compliance with every Indian law and they have not been barred by the Ministry of Defense. But if these 2 conditions are satisfied, you can choose any Indian offset partner that you want. Initially, under the earlier guidelines, there was not much flexibility to change the IOP. But now the guidelines say that you can change your IOP. Of course, it's subject to approval from the government authority. There was also a question of when should I declare who my IOP is? Ideally, your IOP has to be declared at the time of submitting your offset proposal. But again, I think giving the feedback that they've got from companies, I think the government recognizes that that may not always be possible. So there has been some leeway made, and you can declare your IOP even while seeking credits or 1 year prior to discharge of offset obligation. But of course, there is a risk there, because if at that point in time, the government, for whatever reason, finds that your IOP is ineligible, then a penalty will be imposed on you. And that penalty will then have to be refaced in your subsequent years. So there's a risk there. But yes, your IOP can be changed, or also your IOP can be declared at a later point in time. So that's really on who can discharge your offset obligations in India. And finally, for the key avenues that we discussed before, there are identified products and services that you can undertake or manufacture. And these have been listed in an annexure to the offset guidelines. And the products and services are in 4 core sectors, which is defense products, of course, then civil aerospace products. Then there are products for coastal and inland security. And there are about 4 services, ancillary services to these products that you can also undertake, which can qualify as offset obligations. Having said that, only 20% of your total offset obligations can be via services. It cannot be anything more. And again, there are a lot of conditionalities attached to services too. And I may not be able to discuss them now, but happy to go through them in the question and answer session. So this is really the crux of the offset guidelines on the substantive bit. Now moving on to the procedural aspects, I think I just wanted to spend some time to give you a sense of who are the regulatory bodies, what is it that you need to submit, and when do you need to submit. So when it comes to offset guidelines or offset obligations, there are really, within the Ministry of Defense of India, there are 2 key regulatory bodies that you need to know of. So one is called the Acquisition Wing, and the other one is the Defense Offset Management Wing. So one essentially looks at the procedural aspects, and one looks at the drafting and the core substance of the offsets. So your acquisition wing is the one who will look at your proposals, who will make sure that your offset contracts are concluded. The DOMW is more responsible for the formulation of the defense offset guidelines and also look at matters relating to post-contract. So if there's a dispute or there's an issue, then your DOMW will look at it. So those are the regulatory bodies. Now, what proposals do you have to submit for an offset obligation? This is pretty much aligned to the main contract, the main procurement contract. So for your main procurement contract, you have a technical proposal and you have a commercial proposal. In line with that, even for your offsets, you have to submit one technical proposal and one commercial proposal. What does the proposal entail? What does it have? Essentially, you have to give them a breakdown of what you will be doing in each year. What is the time frame? Who are your IOPs? What is the kind of work they will be doing? What is the percentage of work? So those are the kind of details that you have, that your proposal needs to have. How and when are the offset proposals made? So when the request for proposal comes right in the beginning, even before your main procurement contract, it already mandates the need for offset obligation. It already says that the vendor will also have to undertake offset obligations. The timeline is also fixed during the RFP. Then is your second stage of submission. Like I said, the proposals are submitted to the acquisition wing along with an undertaking which says that I will undertake the offset obligations and I will incur penalties if they're not fulfilled, so on and so forth. And the exact date of the submission is binding and it's fixed by the acquisition wing, but it's normally 12 weeks from the date of submission of the main technical and commercial proposal. And then finally, the execution happens with the main contract. So this is really how the proposals get made. There are just a couple of other procedural aspects that are related to offsets that I wanted to highlight. One of them is how long can I take to discharge my offset obligation? So the answer is after the conclusion of your main procurement contract, you have 2 more years to conclude your offset obligations. That time of the main procurement contract also includes the warranty period. So you have that time, and after the end of that time, you have 2 more years to conclude your discharge obligations. If for whatever reason you cannot, you get an extended time period of 6 months, but it's not automatic. You need an approval, and for that you will also need to give a bank guarantee as a performance bond. Again, if you can't complete in a particular year, you can't complete the discharge or fulfill the discharge obligations for that year, you have a penalty of 5%, and that gets passed on to the subsequent years. So you will have to do a rephasing of your offset obligations for that year. So this is really an overview of the procedural aspects. So if you are okay, then I would move on to the third dimension, so to speak, of offsets, which I think is quite critical. For those of you who are joining in from India, or for those of you who have been associated with India for some time, will know that in India execution is an issue. We have a lot of laws which are good on paper, but when it actually comes down to executing them at the ground level, there are several gaps. Sometimes this is intentional, sometimes it's just malfunctioning, but this is the way it stands. So it is always important to understand, sometimes even before you come in, how will the law actually work on ground? And that is what I've tried to do in this section, where I will go over certain themes that I think are important to keep in mind to understand how offset guidelines will actually work on ground. That will kind of help bridge the gap between what it is and what it should be. So there are 4 aspects here. The first one is intent for interpretation. Now, this is something that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Whenever, and several companies have this issue where they have a certain operation or a certain activity in mind, and they don't know whether that will be allowed for offsets or it won't. Now, how do we decide this? Because the law is quite fluid, the offset guidelines are quite fluid. What do you do in such a case? You go back to the objectives of the offset guidelines. Now, if the proposal, the operation or the activity is not in alignment with the objective of either Make in India, or it's not in alignment with the objective of the offset guidelines, there's a very slim chance that that activity will be permissible. So always while making an offset, thinking of an activity or operation, at least we have to make sure that it's not in violation of the intent of the law, which is the objectives and the Make in India. So that's quite important to keep in mind. This slide, I think it sounds fairly basic. It sounds commonsensical, but it's important to keep in mind that yes, there are offset obligations, but no activity will be permissible in India if it first and foremost does not comply with the basic rules and laws of India. So you have to, whenever you think of an activity or an operation, first you want to make sure, and it could be directly through you or it could be via an IOP, doesn't matter. But you want to make sure that that IOP or that activity that you have in mind first complies with every other law in the country. And this means FDI, like I said, sectoral caps, the Companies Act in India. We have many compliances under the Companies Act. If you're going in through an IOP, and which is why we always urge French companies to do a thorough due diligence on the Indian partners. So you always want to make sure that the company is compliant with the Companies Act, with RBI regulations, the Reserve Bank of India regulations, which is a central bank. Then you have very many sectoral policies, be it civil aerospace, so it can be MRO, in the defense sector, in the heavy industry sector. There are many other sectoral policies that might apply. You want to make sure that you know what they are and that you're complying with them. DPIIT licensing policy. Now, often companies are also confused about whether either them or the Indian offset partner needs an industrial license to undertake offset obligations. The answer is no, it is not mandatory. The MOD has come up with a list of products for which you need an industrial license. If you intend to manufacture one of those, you will need an industrial license. Otherwise, an industrial license is not mandatory either for you or for the IOP that you wish to use. Bureau of Indian Standards is the authority that makes certifications and standards in India. Most of their standards and certifications are not binding, they're voluntary. But when it comes to certain high-end technology, often the certification is mandatory. So again, you want to make sure, and because in defense we foresee a lot of high-end technology, you want to make sure that you have the appropriate standards and certifications that you need. So while this is quite basic, we have to backtrack when we are thinking of offset obligations, kind of make sure that your operations are aligned to Indian laws, and then think about offset obligations. Now, so that's a little bit on the legal structuring, but tax structuring is as important, if not more, as legal structuring. Now, at two levels. One, I think direct and indirect tax implications. Many of you may know that in India we have a GST, goods and service tax, and there is no one answer to GST. It really depends on how much GST who will pay, and how much depends on a case-to-case basis. So you really want to structure yourself well and also understand what it will entail if you structure yourself in one way vis-a-vis another way. Now, and the same goes for direct tax as well. Now, up until now in India, a sister concern of a parent company was not given the permission to undertake offset obligations. Now, when I discuss the proposed amendment in 2020, there is a possibility that a sister concern might be able to undertake offset obligations on behalf of the parent company. If that happens, there might be a question of how do I want to route it? Do I want to route it through Mauritius? Do I want to route it through France? Do I want to route it through US? And each of these will have different tax implications. So it's very, very important that you understand the tax structuring before you take up any operations in India. And again, this is something that I've not discussed. It's for the last slide, but in the recent past, the government has also allowed wholly owned subsidiaries of parent companies to work as an Indian offset partner. If that is the case and you set up in India, then transfer pricing becomes critical. You want to make sure that there's arm's length transactions and transfer pricing rules are being followed by the parent company, or you can get into trouble. So that's really tax structuring. And where all this comes together is really finally how you want to align your commercial goals to offset obligations. So some of you may have already been in India for commercial reasons before offset obligations were imposed. But there might be many of you who are in a way compelled by the primary vendor to whom you supply to come down to India to undertake offset obligations. If that is the case, you want to make sure that while discharging offset obligations, you also kind of maximize your commercial goals. And for this, I think in India, it's very important to have a medium to long-term strategy for India. And by that, I mean, what is it that you want to do? And therefore, what is the structure you want to have in India? Do you want to have a joint venture? Do you want to set up on your own? Do you want to do technology transfer? What is it that you want to do? And that will really help you optimize your commercial goals. That's one aspect on the commercial side. Coming to the offset guidelines also, you really need to keep yourself updated with what are the trends. It is not that the law changes every time, no. But because the law is so fluid, there are certain trends from which you get to know that, okay, this is now being accepted by the MOD. This is now okay. So it's very important to keep yourself updated with what is happening. So like I said, the guidelines in itself do not say that a wholly owned subsidiary can be an IOP. But this is a trend that is now being accepted. So this is something that you need to keep yourself aware of. Again, a question related to IOP, and this is really where sometimes it gets complicated. Who should I choose as my IOP? I think Ashwini spoke about the market in India for offsets. I think the one problem we have is there are not very many players even who have the capacity to deliver on offset obligations. At the same time, the government has given certain benefits if you choose a medium to small and medium enterprise to be your IOP. That looks good, but do the MSMEs have the capacity to deliver on your offset obligation? So this is always a balance that you have to find and act accordingly. So that was my third point. Like I spoke about multipliers, it's always useful. If you think that it makes sense to have an MSME as a offset partner, you have a 1.5 multiplier benefit, which essentially means that you get one credit, because 1 unit of credit. If your offset partner, Indian offset partner, is a MSME, it becomes 1.5. So there is a multiplier effect there. And the other advantage that you can take is if you know, for example, you are in India today, you do not have any offset obligations as yet, but you foresee some offset obligations being imposed on you in the future, then you may want to start banking your offsets. That is something that is allowed by the government. I'm happy to go through the details at the end of the presentation if someone has any particular questions on banking. Notwithstanding all of this, I think, again, because every case, every operation and every activity is permitted or not on a case-to-case basis when it comes to offsets, traceability and documentation is key, is absolutely key. You want to make sure that you have every proof at every point from every IOP on your offset obligations on every activity, because this is something that the MOD looks at quite thoroughly while deciding on the permissibility of the offset credits of certain activities. So this is really absolutely important. This was really an overview of the offset guidelines as they stand today up until the 2016 Defense Procurement Policy. Now, 2 weeks back, and this was long overdue, the government has come up with a draft for the Defense Procurement Policy of 2020. And there are certain significant changes that they have proposed. I think it will take some time before actually because now, as of now, it's been tabled and they have, perhaps some of you already got it also for your comments. So it's, of course, going to take some time before they finalize it and it comes into effect. But I just wanted to take you through some of the key changes that I thought have been proposed in the DPP 2020. To start off with, I think they've modified the objectives quite a bit. So earlier, there was also a thrust on ancillary and related sectors, but now that's gone. There is no more focus on ancillary sectors. The emphasis is only and only on defense manufacturing. So really, there is no mention of synergistic sectors. There's only an emphasis on defense products. Another key development, and we have to see the impact of this, is that up until now, even when there was an intergovernmental agreement under Buy Global, it was at the discretion of the Ministry of Defense, MOD, to impose offset obligations or not. But now under the 2020 DPP, that has been taken off. So if there is a Buy Global under an IGA, you will have no offset obligations. So that's quite a big change also. Like I said before, I think something that is a refreshing change for companies, what the DPP 2020 proposes to do is to also consider other entities who is not a vendor, a tier 1 vendor, on a case-to-case basis for rendering discharge activities. So, and the such other entity that comes to mind is a sister concern. So if that happens, that might be useful for companies. Avenues for discharge, they have changed again, and I think this is keeping in alignment with the objectives that they have now. So the thrust is really on defense production and manufacturing. So they've taken off some of the avenues that you had before. For example, provision of equipment, that's not there anymore, but they have a new one which is called investment in defense manufacturing. It could be equity route or non-equity route, but that's something new that they have put in place. Again, there are conditionalities here as well. I will not be going into them, but I've just mentioned them here in the presentation. So there are several conditionalities for each of these avenues, even under DPP 2020. Now, some of the notes that you need to keep in mind is there's not much reference to services. Although it says that there is direct purchase of product and services, in the new DPP, there is not much mention of services. The products have been fairly well streamlined, much better than what they were under the old one. And components and products can be outsourced, have been identified. But like I've mentioned in the next slide, the government, again, the thrust is on manufacturing of products and not just components. So that's again something that you may want to keep in mind. On IOP, again, they've given further flexibility on when you can provide the details of the IOP is also okay at the later stage, even at the signing of the contract. So that's again a refreshing change. Procedural aspects, I think the government wants to bring in more probity. There's, of course, it's the defense sector and any public procurement in India now, corruption, anti-graft are becoming big issues. So in the interest of transparency, they're trying to go online. They're trying to make everything online. They want to make, rather, not trying to, but they want to make. So every post-contract activity after DPP 2020 is envisaged on an online offset portal. And they fixed the timelines, which wasn't the case earlier, for disposal of offset claims, which is 2 months. On the operational aspects, there are many more multipliers put in place. They've also enhanced them. So, for example, if you are investing in the defense industrial corridor, then you have a multiplier of 2. The DRDO multiplier, which was earlier 3, has now become 4. So there are many multipliers they've put in place. Like I said, preference is being given to production of defense products and not components. There's no mention of offset banking under the new policy. So we'll have to wait and see what is to be made of that. Documentation, again, like I said, they've re-emphasized, they've reinforced the need. And something that I came across is also earlier there was only emphasis on the need to comply with the Ministry of Defense policies, but now in the new policy, there's also an emphasis on the Ministry of Home Affairs regulations. So maybe national security could be a reason to accept or not or reject certain activities or operations. That is one other new element that I could see in the DPP 2020. So that's really what I wanted to share in my presentation. That brings me to the conclusion of the regulatory presentation. Happy to take any questions subsequently. But just before we conclude, we just wanted to share a snapshot on what we do at Business France to help you with offset obligations. So there are the activities are threefold. We can have a hotline where we fix the time, units of time, and then we can have one-on-one call with the company to respond to any single query that you may have now and then that may crop up. At the same time, if that doesn't work and you want something more exhaustive, either on the market side or on the regulatory side, we also offer customized studies where we can take you through the different obligations and what it means for your operations in India, either from the market side or on the regulatory side.
Thank you so much, Preeti. It was really enriching to hear you speak about the regulatory aspects of offset policy. As we saw, here are the few support mechanisms that Business France offers when you plan for your projects within India. Business France team can support you with any of these options or all of these options if you want. Now, I would like to introduce a special guest who has agreed to be a part of our webinar today. It is Madame Anne-Laure Lebruchet from Safran, who was connected from Paris. She has extensive experience working with offset and suppliers within Safran. So, ma'am, thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us and the participants today. So it will be great if you can share your experience of offset and suppliers working in India.
Sure. Thanks a lot for your invitation. First of all, Pierre Di Kelly is apologizing because he's the head of Safran in India and he's not available. So I'm Anne-Laure Lebruchet. I'm responsible for the Indian offset for Safran aircraft engines based in Paris. Maybe a few words, because I don't know all the attendees and where we come from in terms of offset. Maybe to introduce on the offset policies, we have a lot of different countries that are asking for offsets when we make a deal, and it's really different rules for any country have specific rules. I think the important thing before going deeper into the Indian rules is really to really understand the offset policy before signing any contract, because it can have a very high impact on the contract itself and the investment that is needed to implement those offsets. So I think it's really a key issue before signing, that we are sure that we will make these offsets, and if we are not sure that we have taken into account in our proposal these penalties or any other commercial impact. Talking about India, on Safran aircraft engine side, we are under DPP 2013, so it may be slightly different from the 2016, but basically the most important thing are the same. First of all, I may say that when we are discharging offset with the DOMW, with the entity, the government entity that are saying yes or no to your offset discharge, they are really following the rules. So, I mean, if it's written something in the offset contract, they will just say yes or no in line of this. So there is not really a rule for interpretation, except when it's not very clear in the guideline, and usually the interpretation is not in favor of our business, I would say. So it's really following the rules and the guidelines. For Safran aircraft engine, of course, offset obligations in India is an obligation, but it's also, in our opinion, it was also an opportunity to develop ourselves in India. So it's not only, I think the important thing is also to see that offsets are not only a financial impact and investment, it's also an opportunity, because it's a huge country and we have a lot of customers there. So we may build opportunities to match customer requirements and offset obligation. Maybe a few words on these specific obligations. I just wanted to share with you the major topics that have been difficult for us to put in place or also to understand. So first of all is documentation. On this offset obligation, we have when we want to discharge the offset obligation, we have a lot of documents to show to the authorities, and as Safran Aircraft Engine is buying a lot of different parts in India, it's a huge amount of documentation. So this is something I think we did not, maybe it's difficult to anticipate, but we have a lot of documents to give. So it may be for a smaller entity very difficult to handle. So this first point is really the documentation and the huge amount of paper that we have to give. Second topic is the Indian law, and we didn't see that at the beginning. Indian law is mandatory to discharge offset obligation, which means that if you want to discharge an avenue like purchasing, you have to purchase to your supplier in India with a contract which is in Indian law, and this is very unusual in the offset world, it's not usual in other countries, and it's very unusual for a French OEM to sign a contract in the local law. So this is a very important point. It must be in Indian law. Then we talked a little bit about MSME business. In Indian government wanted to impulse business with these MSME companies, but the rule today on MSME is not pushing us to improve and to increase our business with MSME, because an MSME is considered as MSME based on its capital investment, which means that if you have not a lot of capital investment, you are considered as an MSME. Whereas in the aeronautical business, we really need a lot of investment to be sure we are in line with the market. So it's difficult for us to find MSME to be able to work with us. Then it's an important point also is the list of products and services that can be discharged under the offset obligation. This is a key document because you cannot go out from this list. So as of today, and Preeti did talk about it, this list was pretty open. It's listed, for example, aerospace business and also services. With this new DPP 2020, as of today, as the draft is given today, there is no more civil business. So it's also a big impact. So another thing to take care of is really to read whether your product and services are in this guideline. Then it's as of today, the parent company business are not allowed to be discharged under your contract. It's also a rule that may be changed with the DPP 2020, but it's not, as today it is not, which is also for groups, it's also an issue because sometimes we invest with one company or the other, and you cannot discharge the offset of your parent or sister or brother or whatever company. So it's also a key factor that you have to keep in mind. And last topic, which is recent, it's the media to discharge offset obligation. As of today, you could give like a paper file, and now it's within a portal, which seems very, very good. But in fact,
is now exiting.
But in fact, it might be difficult for a lot of transactions. If you have a lot of transactions, it may be very a lot of effort to put in the portal all the transactions, because it could be manually, and also it's just the portal may how do you say that? As the portal is giving you the opportunity to discharge avenues, you want to be sure that all avenues that you have in your guidelines are in the contract, and that you can discharge your obligation out of the portal. So basically, that's, I think, in my opinion, Safran Aircraft Engine, that's the major points that we need to take care before signing anything with our partners.